Welcome back to Morning Express. It's about time for us to delve into the issues making rounds on the news this morning as we look to dissect them with critical analysis on ways Nigeria can better her fortunes in our fight against insecurity, banditry, and terrorism. Well, joining me in the studios this morning is public affairs commentator and news analyst, Mr. Ben Agunloye. Mr. Ben, good morning to you and welcome to the program. Now, Mr. Ben, without further ado, these are trying times in the country, and trying times call for desperate measures. I'd like your honest opinion on a number of steps the government of the day has taken in arresting the situation. It wouldn't be the first emergency declaration pronounced by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but the most recent is a nationwide security emergency. What are you expecting from this declaration, and what is it supposed to translate into?
Well, my expectation from it will be straight, that orders will be taken as orders and will be treated as such. Troop deployment will be troop deployment, and they will be adhered to. That men and resources will be deployed better to address the situation we are in. And of course, why all that is going on, you'd also expect that there will be recruitment into the various security sector. And that will be recruitment of individuals who are interested in the job, not people who are looking for where to earn salary. I think that the job of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the DSS shouldn't be for people who want salary, but should be for people who understood why they are coming on the job and are prepared to take up the responsibilities and the challenges of the job. Not just people who want the privilege of the uniform and salaries in their pocket. Now, of course, that is going to be a bit challenging to do, but we expect that the military or the recruiting agencies and the authorities will be able to put their framework together to ensure that at least 80 to 90% of people they are bringing in are people who are conversant with what is expected of them in terms of responsibility, and not people who are after privilege and just getting money like has been stated. So I believe that with the emergency declaration, at least by the president, it means that orders will become orders and people will do things as they are supposed to be done.
Now, this recruitment call is coming at a time when strong allegations have been leveled by Honorable Ahmed Wase, who says that ex-Boko Haram members were found on police recruitment list and even the army list. The president is ordering that at least 20,000 additional men be recruited. But with such allegations coming in, and it won't be the first time people have also questioned the need for having repentant Boko Haram members inducted into the army, what's the call on the government to be more meticulous in recruiting, indeed, persons who you say should be saddled with a more serious business of the day?
Well, allegations will be allegations. They can be proven, they can be unproven. But the truth will be this: if the father are replacing their children with themselves, whether they are interested in the job or not, if the senators and the House of Rep members are bringing their candidates, whether they are the best suited for the job or not, then you will know that there are gaps. So for me, background check should be background check, and people who are found to have questionable background should definitely not be allowed to do certain jobs. But the first question will be, let's screen based on competence. Let's get people who have the required qualities. If they fail the background check while in training, you can then adequately and appropriately isolate them. And because they are even within you, you always can find a more dutiful assignment that you can give to them. You say the idle hand is the Satan workshop. But the fact that you don't want them to be idle is also not a reason to charge them with position of trust. Giving the national gun to an individual or the uniform is a trust bequeathed to someone who should be loyal. So if your loyalty at some point has been questioned and the background check done thereafter reveals that, then it becomes obvious that such individuals should be appropriately handled. But you see, at the point of recruitment, we need to put the desire for the job ahead of those who want salary and ahead of those who have notes and connection. You know, I would always say this, that there is the security stroke intelligence job, there is the military job. Now, in the security stroke intelligence job, there is always a Yoruba adage that I always remember, and that says, Omo Olomo la ran níṣẹ́ dé torutoru. As in somebody who is your own child, or who is to you like a child, who is connected to you by blood, who you cannot send on an errand and be sure that whatever happens there happen. Somebody you want to protect, you don't send them on mission exercise, on mission critical assignment. So it means that from the point of recruitment, you should not recruit people who have such connection and such baggage, because when they get on the job, posting and deploying them to do the job will become a problem. But today, the people we have on the job, majority of them are not people that are not known by the directors who are out of service or by the directors who are in service, which means that their connection, their baggages can affect the effectiveness of their posting. So to a large extent, let's look for people who we think have demonstrated sufficient competence, both in aptitude, in attitude, to do the job. And then when you have put them on the job, or you have put them in training, you can continue the background check. Any of them that is now not so fit to carry out the assignment, you can always plug them out. That's on one part. And then when you come to the police, the army, the navy, the air force,
let's not lump them all together.
Okay.
Let's start with the police, because this is a very pertinent cause. It's not new advocacies. In fairness to the National Assembly, back in 2017, the former Speaker, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, called for a complete overhaul of the current policing structure in the country, citing the rise in spate of kidnapping at the time. Lending calls to former Deputy Speaker as well, much like we looked at Ame Idris Wase's claim that they are ex-Boko Haram members who have infiltrated our military personnel. Now, the challenge with the recent directive by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that NYC camps be used as training depots for the 20,000 recruitments that are envisioned into the police. That's why I say let's start with the police. Does this suggest that we have lack of training camps across the country? Why NYC depots?
Well, now, if one of the things that can hinder training will be, I don't know what capacities the police colleges have, but I know there is a police college in Ondo, there is a police college in Lagos, there is a police college
There's one in Cross River,
there is in Jos. So across board, if those facilities, because again you need to be careful, if the facilities are not sufficient, right, and then you train the people in the wrong environment, right from training, they will pick up wrong habits. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. If you cannot appropriately cater for them over the period for which they are to be trained. So if police training, I think, takes about 6 months. Now, if you have other grounds that can be available, so I think what the president is suggesting is to say, look, rather than employ 10,000 and wait for another 6 months, if you are taking 20,000 at a stretch, the police is used to taking 10 over the last 5 years or thereabout. In every recruitment slot, I think it's 10,000 they've been taking. So if you are now increasing to 20,000, he is saying that, look, take over some, use some of the NYSC facilities. Of course, they are built in the form of camp, and apart from shooting range, virtually every other thing you possibly have in a regular regimentation environment is available in the NYSC camp. It just means that a part of the training holds there, and if you need to take them to the shooting range, you look for the nearest shooting range and you take them. But what he is saying is he's just preempting a situation where they will say, oh, we don't have enough accommodation to take 20,000.
Duly noted. Let's look at another directive still reviewing the president's declaration of what he intends for when he says there needs to be a nationwide security emergency. He has also instructed the Department of State Services, DSS, to deploy forest guards to some of the hotspots where there are rising spate of this to flush out the terrorists. Persons also question the weaponry that these forest guards have and how they can match heavier artillery, like we've seen some of the bandits display on social media. How do you find this synergy between the DSS and forest guards with the intended directive by the president?
Well, the president has been talking about forest guard, and each time I come here, I talk about that until you take possession of the forest.
But do we indeed have sufficient forest guards on ground?
Well, if he is giving that job to the DSS to do, it means that he's saying they are training.
Because we're seeing some pockets.
That means he's saying clearly that their training will have to come from
the DSS.
The DSS.
Okay.
Which I think it means that it situates with what most people have thought about, which is number one, that you are looking at operational efficiency and you are looking at intelligence gathering. So wherever they are presently, they need to be trained. Before you can deploy them, you've got to give them some measure of training. You've got to teach them in weapon handling.
Agreed. But Mr. Ben.
And so the president, I do not expect him to say on air what
the key details of
this will be made available to them. But the fact that at least he has given a direction, which is their training and supervision. As you are beginning to give them, you may be giving them arms, will be coming.
But in your honest assessment of the current forest guard structure, are you satisfied with the level of recruitment? Do you think it is open enough? Because some Nigerians are already beginning to murmur that it seems as though it's only favoring a certain region, whilst the Sambisa cannot be categorically defined as a forest when you look at the topography of the area. Who are those benefiting from recruitment into forest guards, and are there some interest in that regard? How do we quell all this?
No, the basic agreement or the basis arrangement is when you're talking about forest, like as it is, you can't throw me into Kanji forest. I don't understand it. But if you take me back to Ondo North and you put me in the Akoko forest, whether it is on the boundary with Edo or Kogi, or you are coming back to the boundary with Ekiti along the river or say axis, I have grown through some of those forests as a child. A lot of hunters and people who grew up in those environments knows it. And what we have said about the forest guard going forward is, if you are recruit people who are in the contiguous zone of where the forest is. You want to police Sambisa, recruit people who are from Adamawa, Borno, and whichever other state
who are familiar with the terrain
and on the fringes of that environment. Now, when you give them the job, this is the implication. When you give an Akoko man the job to secure the Akoko forest, what you have basically done is, he's not just securing his own self, he's not just earning a living for himself, right? But he has been put in charge to protect his family, his own family and cousins and blood relatives, right? So if, for instance, you go to that environment and you take 5,000 people, I tell you that you are not putting 5,000 people on that job. You're actually putting about 50,000 people on the job. Why? Because his kids and kin will watch over him. Why? He has been given weapon to watch over them. So that environment, because they now have that sense of security, that we know the people who are there. They are our own people. So it's not about favor who or not. If you don't have a forest, I do not see it that it should be a priority that you should be given a job in the forest guard system. Because you do not belong there, the chances of compromise becomes high. Now we are saying, so it should be that at least 70% of the people you are taking in each of those environments should be indigenous or If they are not indigenous, then they should have been resident in the environment. I know there are people from Sokoto, there are people from Delta who speak my dialect better than I do. So if you are recruiting in that environment, you don't have to call me from Abuja to Ondo State to be recruited. If there is an Idoma man who have lived there even before who was born there, and is on ground, speak the dialect, understand the terrain.
A citizen by naturalization.
So those ones can be employed. But it is not importing people from other states to come and they are just there for their salary. And we are saying for security-related jobs, we should deviate from giving people job in the name of earning salary and uniform.
All right.
But because of the their understanding of the responsibility that it entails.
All right, duly stated. Let's look at 2 more points on this before we come to the second item on our program this morning. Still with the president's declaration, he has also said that there should be an end to open grazing. Ranching should be the way forward, and he's calling on part of the headers who have weapons with them to surrender such ammunition. Do you think this call would be heeded just by mere call, or does it need to be enforced? It brings into question subjects of negotiating with some persons who, for lack of better terminology, are now characterized as bandits in a way.
Well, the question here would be this. As far as I'm concerned, headers are headers, bandits are bandits. And bandits should be treated as the criminals that they are.
Now, there should be no confusion. Headers with AK-47s?
There should be no confusion. The moment you carry AK-47
no longer
and terrorize people, you are no longer an header. You are now a bandit. And header should have a stick.
Not an AK-47.
Not an AK-47. So if you carry an AK-47 in the forest, as far as I'm concerned, you are a criminal. It's as simple as that. Because I'm not sure anybody licensed them.
I quite agree with you. That's why I said
that AK-47.
I quite agree with you. That's why I said for lack of a better terminology.
So there should be no confusion between who is a bandit and who is an header. And so we should stop using those general terms to confuse the people and complicate the situation. A criminal is a criminal, a farmer or a header, it's a farmer, and a header, it's a header. So I think we should put it like that. Now, on the issue of grazing, agriculture is not an exclusive legislation in Nigeria. So whether it is Ministry of Agriculture or Ministry of Livestock, they both have responsibilities for legislation both at the federal and at the state level. So, and I think that because the land belongs to the state, not the federal government, then the issue of ranching and the rest needs to be discussed
at the state level
and agreed upon at the state level. When I was growing up in primary school, we used to visit ranch in the Den Ondo State. There was one at Okeako in Ekiti, and I remember that there was another one at Akunakoko. But today I'm not sure there is still any ranch at Akunu, but you still have a whole lot of Fulani men who graze within those pastures today. So it's a function of the state re-establishing. These are maybe the grazing zone. So you put the fence, you put whatever you need to put in place, you register who are the headers that would graze in those environments.
I know you've made a case for the states. You've made a case for the states,
Yeah.
but does this take away the relevance of the Ministry of Livestock? Because most of these issues you're listing have been listed under part of the responsibilities of the Ministry of Livestock. So how do they find the synergy?
It is for the Ministry of Livestock to liaise with the state. In those days, I don't know what NALDA does now, but in Abacha regime there was NALDA. I'm not sure NALDA was operating from Abuja at the time on their own. No, they liaise with the state. They liaise with the locals. They get information from the agri-development programs in the different states. What crop can we grow in this environment? What tree? So it was land administration. So if what you can grow is cashew, that's what NALDA supports you to do. And then you're working with data that are available or that emanates from the state. So the Ministry of Livestock will also need to take such a responsibility because it's a concurrent legislative issue, right? Federal government can take certain decisions, but they don't own the land. the state owns the land. And so there is that need for synergy between the center and the state. And then, of course, because you are talking about cross-border movement and the rest, of course, it goes beyond just one state. Because you're now going to have the question, okay, Ekiti say no to open grazing, right? Maybe Edo says no to open grazing. If Ondo didn't say no to open grazing, and then it has contiguous boundary very large with both Ekiti and Edo, in the border communities there will be issues. But if you have come to terms, and these are the states that permit and these are the grazing area, then we may also need to agree on what will be the format of movement in case you need to move from one grazing area to the other. And all that should be ironed out. So I think it shouldn't be a case of open, it should just be a case of declaration. It should be a case of you already have the plan on ground. If you say, okay, this is now a ranch, where would they get water? Where would the ranchers live? Is there school? Is there provision for health? All those things have got to be in place. If those plans are not there and we are just making statements, then those statements will end up amounting to wishful thinking and careless pronouncements.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ben Agunloye. Quite salient points raised there as we look to review President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's declaration of a nationwide security emergency following a spike in the recent spate of abductions. The president has issued several directives to the police and the army to recruit more personnel. He has also called for an end to open grazing, also mandating that the DSS deploys forest guards to flush out terrorists in such zones. But more so now to a directive issued to the National Assembly. The president has asked for an expedition of the state police. And whilst the Senate has also taken the initiative on her own to ensure that kidnapping becomes classified as terrorism with needed amendments to the Terrorism Prevention Act. The Senate, deliberating in plenary yesterday, Wednesday, came up with this as we look at it and the hopes of ensuring that the death penalty serves as a deterrent to those offenders and those who are culpable of such abductions. Now, yesterday it was quite interesting to listen to Senator Abdul Ningi move that motion and calling for the Senate to adopt it whilst it embraced the need to classify kidnapping, banditry as acts of terrorism with the death penalty. Many Nigerians are not too sure that when it falls in the prerogative of certain governors and even most recently with the presidential pardon granted to some ex-convicts, that death penalties actually carry their weight in Nigeria and would serve the purpose. What's your assessment of this argument?
Well, first, let the rule be available. When you now come to implementation, the practical reality is that you will see rules that are made, you will see laws that have been there, and maybe for 10 years, nobody tends to act upon them. But the fact that the provisions have been made tells you that tomorrow, if there is somebody who will wake up and decide to do the needful, then it will be done. But if that fellow at that time is now the one who is struggling to enact the law, right, then you will now have a case where you are talking about laws cannot be retroactive. So it is good that those laws are coming up now. Even if the current generation of governors fail to use them, there will be some new people replacing them who will be able to effectively speak to those laws.
So it's indeed a good thing that...
Needful. So putting the law in place at all is good enough. It tells you that they won't accuse a governor come 2028 that is creating a law and is applying it retroactively. No. So it won't be retroactive. The law is already there from now if they are able to pass it. And so the offenders from now also know that this is your consequence if you are caught doing what you are trying to do.
Now, Mr. Ben, let's discuss the why. Why is it that at the state level and even the federal level, there's somewhat a shying away of enforcing the death penalty? Most persons would fail to append their signatures even when the judiciary does prescribe that we keep in accordance with our laws and this is the deserved punishment.
Well, it is the duty of the governors to sign death warrant. I think that is what it is in a democratic setting. So, if the governors are failing to sign, I think that the civil society should begin to call them out. Let's have a list of who and who are on death row and find a way of reminding the governors. Because when you say you have put someone on death row, for some of them, they lost initiatives and they lose everything about life and they are just waiting to die. Now, for somebody waiting for 3, 4, 5 years to die and is not dead, I think it's actually, for me, a crime against humanity by the governor. If you don't want to kill them, maybe you want to free them or you want to commute their sentence. But at least there should be a list. Some of the NGOs should be able to do that and keep a tap on the governors. You are failing in your responsibility to do this. So at every point in time, whether it will come from the National Correctional Service or whichever service, there should be a place where you can see how many people in each state of the federation are on death row, right? Whose death warrant have not been signed by the governors. And then we also want to possibly see how many of the cases have been appealed. Because sometimes also we may just not know. Okay, maybe the High Court has sentenced to death and the fellow have decided to go on appeal to the magistrate court. Sometimes to the Court of Appeal and maybe further to the Supreme Court. Sometimes there are cases who have been on our Supreme Court bench for more than 10 years. So if the case is still pending in court and has not been determined, then you actually cannot blame the governor not to have signed. So we possibly need to have a template, a database that can actually show us, if not possibly their names, how many people are in the different custodian centers
who are on the death row.
How many of them have pending appeals? How many of their cases have gone to the Supreme Court and fully determined? How many of them have lost their opportunity to appeal? Maybe the judgment was passed and there is a window for appeal and they failed to.
Exactly.
So it means that at least on their own case there is already status bar. I think that data should be available at the push
to clear
of buttons.
controversies. Now let's talk about one controversy which is most recent that kind of escalated outroar and a backlash from Nigerians. The prerogative of mercy is a constitutional power both granted to the office of the president and governors. In section 175 of the constitution for the president, while section 212 for governors. But most recently, the one exercised by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, especially for those who were ex-convicts on charges of drug-related offenses, murder and other heinous crimes who were granted pardon, was met with the narrative that some of those names were smuggled into the list, despite consultations with the Council of State. In the event of such, particularly with the push from the Senate now that kidnapping be enlisted as crimes punishable by the death penalty.
Yeah.
What's the hope to serve as a deterrent going forward? That we don't have persons who might be accused to be sponsors of such crimes looking to smuggle names
for
into
pardon
that.
through the bank.
Exactly, sir.
Well, you see, basically, we talk about crimes and we leave it. The fact that you do not have authorization to release a memo and you release it should carry consequence. From demotion to dismissal or to whatever the Service Act states. But the truth is that people have been leaking official information and nobody has really done anything to them. Official breaches are not supposed to be tolerated, but we've tolerated it for too long. Okay, people smuggle names onto the list. When you find out that they have been smuggling, then you need to find out at what point did the smuggling happen. In whose custody did it happen? So whoever was supposed to be the custodian when it happens should be punished. A further investigation should determine who smuggled it and what was the motivation for it. They should be punished and their external collaborators should be identified. Yes, there are lobbying everywhere in the world, but not to the extent of you now did not even get the pardon, but you smuggle the list. I remember in one of, maybe the head office of one of the organizations in those days, the overall boss will sign the cover letter. And then deliberately they will refuse to number the names.
And even the names
and the number of pages. So what they then do is to now get their own candidates and add pages. So you have the cover page and you have the last page signed. But in between,
this is a
they
drawing
have
concern.
Infiltrated the list. And you realize that even when suspicions are raised, the tension, they get calmed down. So I think basically, number one, across board, we need to also train people in the area of information security. A lot of people on the job had never had any training on document handling and document processing. And so people leverage on their ignorance to cheat. But of course, we said ignorance is no defense in law. So if it happens on your system, if it happens on your desk, you should be held responsible and you should be punished. But a further investigation should go down to show us how it happened so that going forward, it can be prevented.
Thank you very much. This calls for further investigations. Let us dive into the next issue. It's the issue the Senate raised for a probe into how soldiers were withdrawn just a few hours before the abductions in the Kebbi school happened. Now, it's another issue of hierarchy. Who gave the order? Who had the boots on ground and who were involved in the whole process? Do you think that the Senate will be able to achieve its intended cause in breaking into book or 7 punishments to those who were culpable of a security lapse in some way whilst the abductions happened?
Of course, for me, such an action, if indeed it happened, and because if it were the military hierarchy withdrawing you from a post where you have been deployed, they should have made an alternative provision for who takes over from you. And who is taking over from you should have arrived before you are able to depart. So if that had happened, that somebody withdrew without making provision for replacement in such a sensitive position, I think that whoever is involved in the value chain should be treated for mutiny.
All right. Hold your thoughts.
It is a case against the state.
All right, Mr. Ben, hold your thoughts. We'll go on a quick commercial break, and when we return, Mr. Ben and I will take you through more of these stories in the news, particularly with more calls from the Senate. And this time it's considering licensing of firearms for responsible citizens to carry these guns to protect themselves in a rising spate of insecurity. Stay with us. Well, thanks for staying with us on the program this morning. Still in our studio is Mr. Ben Agunloye. In the course of our discuss with him, we also hope to be joined by another guest who joins us virtually, Dr. Osodeke Onovughe, who will join us also to lend his thoughts in the course of our discussion. Before the break, we're talking about deliberations on the floor of the National Assembly with proposals by the Senate in particular. We talked about the need for a probe into the alleged withdrawal of soldiers before the Kebbi school abductions. And now the Senate is also looking to pass a resolution for citizens to own firearms. But the caveat there is that these citizens are considered to be responsible citizens. I know this debate started sometime last year when Senator Ned Walker proposed that we have licensing for responsible citizens to be able to pick up arms to defend themselves. Persons were concerned that that's the line the Americans towed, and now we have a rising case of gun violence in schools, and it might be counterproductive in some sorts with the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. But in your honest opinion, sir, do you believe that licensing responsible citizens to pick up arms in self-defense would help curb the spate of abductions? We've seen memes on social media where persons show Catholic priests, churchgoers taking some form of weapons, machetes, when they gather for service in the wake of certain attack on churches as well. Let's get your honest opinion of this.
Well, Do we need individuals to carry weapons in Nigeria? I think I do not.
You don't subscribe?
I agree. Why? Because a lot of things have been privatized and a lot of private businesses have been mismanaged, and there is nothing the government can do about them. People who mismanage their personal businesses and their personal money can mismanage any weapon. As simple as traffic light, we don't
Obey those rules.
I drive with my son, and sometimes we are at the traffic light, and daddy is asking me, is it that every other person is colorblind? So what do you know? He said, this thing is on red. Why are they passing?
Just such a small issue draws concern for even a bigger issue.
So you will see that somebody who cannot obey the traffic light, in my opinion, somebody who will drive one way, someone who will not keep to the ethics of his work, would definitely
you can't trust such
not. You can't trust any
Mr. Ben, that's a salient point you've raised.
With the gun.
Let's see if Dr. Osodeke can now join us to also weigh his thoughts into this debate. Doctor, good morning to you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Very well, Doctor. Thank you for taking our time to join us on the program this morning. I believe you heard the view of Mr. Ben. I'd like you to add your thoughts to it. The Senate is moving for a resolution to approve responsible citizens in Nigeria to pick up firearms in self-defense with the rising spate of abductions. It's been largely debated. Mr. Ben has made his case. What's your take on the issue, sir?
Good morning to the guests in the studio, and good morning, my brother. It's a pleasure being here again. I think most of the time we don't learn from history. We don't seem to learn from history. You just made mention of the United States, where gun violence, because of their proliferation of weapons, gun violence takes nothing less than 40,000 lives every year in the United States. And yesterday you heard what happened in White House, where 2 National Guard were shot. Whether they were still alive now or dead, nobody can say. This is America, where they have the best educational system, one of the best educational systems on earth. And you put weapons in the hands of individuals. They are misusing it. Then what do you think will happen in Nigeria? Today, there is no purification of arms, no licensing of arms. But if you go to every nook and cranny in this country, we don't even need to say, let's start the law. A lot of weapons are flying around in this country. Small boys, cultists, the useless set of people, the lowest of the lowest that we can think of. Almost all of them have weapons. So when you say you want to categorize responsibility, like the guest in the studio said, how do you even measure the responsibility? Who is going to define it? Who will be defining that this person is responsible and the other one is not responsible? In a system like Nigeria, where the person who will be issuing the weapon, the person himself is not responsible. So if you are saying the person that want to rate responsible is not responsible, so how do you think these weapons will not be misused? They are speaking sometimes. I don't really know what happened in our National Assembly. Someone was speaking yesterday in House of Rep. He said because they cannot tackle security, they should shut down the National Assembly. You can imagine the level of people we send to that National Assembly. National Assembly is a partner in solving this problem. And you say if we cannot tackle it, shut down the National Assembly. So why is it there? What is he doing there? Is he going there to complain? Is he going there to cry? Or to solve this problem? When we are in national emergency, the National Assembly sit up. They make laws. They probe ammunitions. They probe, like the failure that they said they want to probe. You probe why military was withdrawn. Why the military men are not combing the bushes. You don't come up and they just call. We have a lot of certain persons that should not be in the National Assembly in the first place that are there. And that is the beginning of the problem this country is going to. So for me, it's a waste of energy to say you want to give people harm. Who are you giving harm? He's going to create more anarchy. Weapons, a lot of persons have weapons now. We are trying to recover some of these weapons. You want to put more into the system. Then you have declared war on Nigerians.
Now, thank you, Dr. Osodeke, with your view on the matter. Coming to the National Assembly, it was only but last year that the legislation in itself was introduced, seeking the control of small weapons and light arms. Now, there's supposed to also be a national center for the control of small arms and light weapons in the North Central Zone in Mina. The statistics were also published as to the proliferation which Dr. has also alluded to. How would you rate the functionality of this legislature and the center in itself?
Well, like I said, law will be law. The people will be the people. Now, when you have the law in place, the next thing is to define the process. Where are these light weapons? Where are these firearms? How do we get them from where they are to where we want to keep them away from circulation? Have we worked out that algorithm? Has it been well defined to say that, okay, this is the report? How do you know that the weapons are there? Who reports what? Is it voluntary by the people who have them, or by people who possibly maybe acquire them for some purpose, give them to people who did not return it? It's not impossible. Whether cult activity or election matters, they know some of the things we are saying. The guns did not come from space. Somebody imported them, or somebody smuggled them one way or the other. So until we have a defined framework for how to get it out of where they are to where we want to keep them, I think that we will not be getting results. So it is not just about the law. It is not just establishing center. Establishing center for me is about bureaucracy. It's about giving some people job. It's about paying some people salary. It's about creating office and generating what would you call it, expenditure source, and cost will continue to go there because you pay the salary, you manage the office and the rest. But we should go beyond that to define in clear terms. Let's have the program. Let's have the algorithm. These are the areas or the places where we think these illegal arms are at the moment. This is what can be done to retrieve them. This is what we need to do to ensure that new ones are not coming in. So until you have an idea of what is there, planning the control, that is what is out there, how it got there, and then you can now do a reverse psychology of how to retrieve them. But when you don't know what is there or how they got there, the chances are that we're just making laws at both ends that will likely not yield
its
the
intended
desired
results.
result.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, Dr. Osodeke Onovughe, are you still with us, sir?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right, sir. Let's shift gears now. Let's leave the troubles of Nigeria and look at some of the continental challenges we're facing. Now, the spate of coups in the Sahel and Africa have been increasingly disturbing. In 2025, we're looking at a situation where we might not have any coups. But Madagascar in October also witnessed a coup. And quite shockingly, whilst the electoral process was ongoing in Guinea-Bissau, where we had ex-President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan on international election observer mission, he is now trapped in the country as the military in Guinea-Bissau have declared a military takeover. But what's happening to us? ECOWAS was just trying to wrestle control away from the Sahelian states. We're seeing a growing trend of military and non-democratically led governments. Is democracy in itself becoming obsolete in Africa? What are some of your postulations on this issue?
The democracy is a choice. And what I see happening in most parts of Africa is that some persons, it's all about proliferation of this social media. A lot is happening within the social media space. And some persons, they believe that once the military comes, everything is going to be fine. The whole street will be okay. No hunger within the system again. People will continue to live happily. People will continue to live very, very rich. So there is a lot of misconception, and this thing is being driven especially by the young people, the very young people that call themselves Gen Z, who are not properly guided. Because many of us here, we saw the military, we witnessed military regimes, and we know how difficult. Today I can come to your studio, I can speak anything I want to say here against Mr. President. I can say whatever I want to say here against Mr. Governor. I can say whatever I want to say here against Mr. Chairman. I have that voice, and I can speak whatever I want to say without fear or favor. That is what democracy has given to us, and that is how we are able to enforce accountability. But most of these young Gen Zs, they don't know anything about military. They don't know anything about democracy. They don't know anything. All they just want is good life. And many of them feel that when the military comes in, everything is going to be an Eldorado. We saw it happen in Niger. Niger would have been a reference case for us to reverse this game. But the populace in Niger, over 80% of them, were in full support of the military regime. We saw when it happened in Burkina Faso, Mali, and others. The people within that zone, they were 100% in support. When they took over in Mali and Burkina Faso, they promised the people that within certain few months, they would have quelled all forms of terrorism within their system. But as I'm speaking to you now, 40% of Mali is still within this grip of jihadists and Islamic terrorists. So what they promise is not what they are delivering. Nigerians, they are suffering. So the problem is that most of these Gen Zs, they think things will change. But from their experience in Mali, in Niger, and Burkina Faso, it's sure that nothing is changing. And when you look at that of Guinea-Bissau, you have to blame the politicians sometimes. Like in Cote d'Ivoire, I'm very, very pissed off when I see somebody that has said 2 terms of 10 years. He's saying he wants to go for re-election for the 3rd term. And sometimes they go for 4th term. So these ones, I don't categorize them as democracy. But when you have strong democracy, you don't replace it with military rule. If you look at what is happening in Cameroon, for example, a 99 years old, I mean 94 years old man who has ruled that country for over 40 years, contesting and winning an election is an invitation to coup. So first of all, the democracy must be democracy. Like the type we have in Nigeria, no matter how bad Nigerian democracy you may feel in your faith, Tinubu is not going to rule beyond 2031. Another person will come in. After 2031, another 8 years or 4 years, another person will come in. That is how democracies are run. So if I'm to say this clearly, it depends on those clamoring for it within those countries. Then secondly, it depends on the type of democracy they are running. And to me, there's nothing ECOWAS should do. They should just impose sanction, lock the border against those military boys, and don't intervene. That is my own suggestion.
Well, thank you, Dr. Osodeke. I'll come back to you, Mr. Ben. He's raised the points of elongation of tenure and some of the issues that bring about these coups. But one of the persons who's been embroiled in this, who never wanted for his tenure to be elongated, also said that no single drop of blood is worth his presidential ambitions, and is now being seen as a testament to how credible polls are, was an election observation mission, and is now trapped in a country where there's military coup. What's the paradox in this?
Well, how do I say it? In my place, they say what you will not eat, you don't test the aroma. Now, there are people who are fashioned for some of these things. There are people who should get involved. There are people who should not get involved. Yes, to a large extent, we will say, oh, Goodluck Jonathan is a decent politician, this and that. But practically also, we have seen across Africa that there are a lot of things that are not decent. And so maybe if you are decent to a large extent, you possibly might deal in mentoring, not in operation. Produce more people like you, and then the society becomes better. So I will be looking forward to something more like a Goodluck Jonathan Leadership Foundation that people across West Africa can come to learn principles of tolerance and the rest from, as against you be the operational person. You can't actually change whatever. When you are an observer, you only observe.
And give reports.
You write report. But if you are more involved with mentoring and training people, then you actually have people who can put their boots on ground and ensure that the proper things are done. Now, when you come to military intervention, yes, those who want the military or who clamor for them and clap for them really don't know what it is. Military rule is now our thing in Africa. I would always say in the Southwest there is a language, say Aremoki Ijakeweje. That is, the crown prince will never be the field commander. So it tells you that there is a separation between royalty and military might. That's the practical reality. And Aremo can train to be a soldier, but will not be a field commander because he's going to be the king. So his priority is managing the kingdom and leading everybody, not just leading the military. So to a large extent, we are more of a parliamentary people, but I've not seen that in most of our discussion than presidential. One of the biggest issues we have across our system is the fact that you give out that presidential power to an individual and he doesn't see reason why he should cede that power. But we are more indeed of a parliamentary people, and you would have seen nations. There was a time within 4 years Japan had 6 prime ministers and the whole world didn't know anything was changing inside Japan. In the last 5 years, I'm sure that the Great Britain had about 4, if not more, prime ministers, and the system had continued to run. So that is the way we are, multi-ethnic in some African nations, multiracial in some. And so if the people are going to live together, we need to have a better understanding of rules that situates with our culture. We don't have a warrant chief system, which is what the presidential system does. And that's why a president can go to any state to go and pick a minister, whether the people want that individual or not, whether the individual represents or relates with the people of the constituents or not. Okay, the law says I should have a minister from every state, Abi, and so I have picked minister from every state. And if he has majority in the assembly, no matter what you have to say, he will stay. We remember when the Lagos people said that Ganga is not their representative, and yet for 8 years in Goodluck Jonathan regime, he was a minister representing Lagos, not Edo, where he's from. So we need to respond. I think it's Fela that sang that song that government teacher is culture and tradition. Presidential system is not in our culture, and that's why there is nothing presidential about a lot of African presidents, because we are monarchical, we are parliamentary, and so decisions, there are ways we take our decision, not one arrowhead somewhere shooting the others. But when you put them, you then see the defect. And I think that if we are going to be talking about democratic norms across the African continent, people should be dovetailing back to any form of parliamentary system that suits their purpose. We are not presidential, we cannot be presidential, and presidential system will not give us the development that we desire from bottom up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ben Agunloye. I know you'll be taking your leave in some moments, but we must thank you for your thoughts on the program. But whilst we would be parting ways with Mr. Ben shortly, let's stay with Doctor. Doctor, Mr. Ben has talked about finding homegrown systems of running what we envision as governance. The recent one, which although it's at the federating unit level, was seen by the 17 southern governors who also are seeking for constitutional roles for the southern traditional rulers. They just met over the course of the last 48 hours, and they were also speaking about the need to have a joint zonal security fund to enable their states, 17 states, tackle their peculiar issues as it concerns insecurity. How do you view this in terms of deviating from presidential systems to a more parliamentary-driven system, much like Mr. Ben had advocated for?
Personally, I don't think the system is the problem. The problem are the actors. If let's assume you have a reckless driver and you decide to build a vehicle for that driver, if you turn that car from Oma Jeep to lorry, or turn it from lorry to keke, or turn it from keke to bike, it's still going to remain reckless. So the problem is not about the system of governance. It's about the actors that are governing within that structure. Let's assume, I've seen a lot of websites in the United States of America, for example. You have, let's assume, if your station is supposed to be data broadcasting service, for example, your station must have a website whereby we know the number of staffs that are within your station. If you are 20 there, they know you are all 20. And within your salary remuneration, it can be predicted that your salary is not supposed to take more than 1 billion. So let's assume tomorrow, a governor now said they are paying ADBN staffs 5 billion. We will begin to ask questions. How is it possible for you to pay 20 staff 5 billion? So we question immediately. But in Nigeria, you don't have that. A governor can just come up and say, we have 30,000 workers within my state. It's not verifiable by any Nigerian. There's no way you can verify it. So he may be paid 20,000 persons, and somebody is keeping the other 10,000 persons salary in his own pocket. So if you come to that, how do you not correct such system? It's not by changing from parliamentary to the presidential or from presidential to monarchy. No, that is the mistake that we make. Many of these people make on social media, thinking changing structure, changing this. If you have bettered military guys to take over the power in your state, you have bettered new dictators in the form of Jerry Rawlings, in the form of Abacha. So the problem is not about the structure. The problem we have is about the actors, and what the governors are doing, to me, is just for the cameras. Whether they meet the 17 Southern governor meet somewhere, no, it's just for the camera. You don't need to have 17 governors. If when they shot somebody at White House yesterday, all the 52 state governors of America are not going to sit down to think of how to stop those shootings. No, the governor is the governor of his state. He's like a president, just with the difference of not having the power to the military. If there's anything happening within Delta State, yeah, the governor should be able to tackle it. Why should he go across 17 states? If they kidnap somebody in Asaba, am I going to call the Cross River governor to come and save me? No. The governor here know what to do to tackle the security. They are just jamboree. This sitting of 17 governors, they are jamboree. And
now,
when they say they want to do, okay.
Now, Doctor, talking about this meeting in terms of strategy, you've raised salient points here. But even at the individual state levels, I know there have been a lot of concerns and queries about how governors expend what is tagged security votes. Now that there's supposed to be a zonal security purse where monies will be collected, is this towards state policing? Do you think that it will be more judicially accounted for as against when only just one state governor decides whatever he chooses to use his security votes for?
Who is even going to monitor the security fund? Who is going to pay in? They love. One problem we have, just I've always advocated. One problem we have is not about the Lagos has security fund. Yes, maybe they are trying to copy from Lagos, but who is going to manage that security fund? And secondly, it's not about having separate funds for security. They generate revenue. If the governors, for example, the chairmen are accountable to me and you, and we are talking of chairman, for example, I don't even know the name of the chairman of my local government. As educated as I am, I don't know his name. As of today, we have 774 local governments. Only 8 have websites. In today's world, these are people collecting not less than 1 billion in a year. And these are people from the national purse. They collect over 5 to 6 trillion every year, and they don't have websites. So how do you even know what they are doing? If somebody from that local government says it's funding, it's opening security fund, how do I even know what is there and what is not there? The one that has been given to him, if the chairman, for example, not want to be accountable to the people, open website. If you have a health department, put the number of money you are giving to the health department. If you have education department, put the money you are giving there so that me and you here, sitting at home, we can study where those monies are going to. And when, for myself, I know where the money is going to. I know that you are using it to fix health center. I know that you are using it to grade road. If you ask me to pay more, I will be very happy to pay more. If you ask me, for example, let me give one instance, like in property tax. Property tax alone, for the US, for example, they generate almost 1 trillion from property tax. 740 trillion from property tax in the whole of the states in US. So if we introduce property tax, many of us, we have landed property. Many of us have houses that we collect rent from. We don't pay tax on them. So if you tell me, for example, that come and pay such tax, and I know what you are using my money for, if I'm paying you, if I sell a land today and I make 1 million, I can say, okay, I'm giving the government 100,000. And when they make this money, they can use it to secure me and you, wherever we are sitting down at. So, but they are not open, they are not opaque. They are very opaque, sorry to say, and they are not open. So when they are comfortable in collecting this money are not being accounted for. So that is the biggest challenge we have in Nigeria. The actors are not sincere.
Now, coming to the issue of even the policy of governments on a no negotiation with bandits and terrorists, there are growing concerns. One of the dailies we looked at earlier on, the Daily Trust, had the story released, rescued, or ransomed. Now, this is following the release of 38 church worshippers who were abducted from the CAC church in Kwara. About 50 persons were also recovered out of 315 students and teachers who were abducted in Niger State, while more calls are for the release of other students who have been abducted in the same time. What do you advise be the position of respective state governments going forward in terms of incidences of kidnappings, abductions, and dealings with bandits?
When I heard them saying how were they released? Where are the heads of the kidnappers? Where are those that kidnap the students? I sometimes, some of our people, most of them really, they are Gen Zs. They don't really understand what security is all about. But I blame the older ones among them still asking this type of question. These are kids, for God's sake. These are kids. When I saw some of them yesterday, those from Niger, some of them are barely 10, 11 years old. So how do you want them to be rescued? So do you want the government to just go in there with bombs, with a gun, and start shooting people around? How do you even kill them? How do you kill the kidnappers surrounding kids? So sometimes we bring in theory that are not practicable. You want the government to go in and rescue those students. Go into the forest and rescue those students. You want the government to go in there with go. Are they saying the people that want to rescue them should go there with bare hand like Jet Li and Jackie Chan? And when they jump into the bush, they just use hand to hold all of them and arrest them. You are going to fight with guns. As sophisticated as America is, they went to Somalia to free UN hostages, about 100 of them. And they lost over 50 military men, injured, over 70 injured. And over 1,000 Somalians were killed. Till today, you see a reference point. As sophisticated as US, they went to Grenada to rescue some of their students using weapons. And at the end of the day, 3 of these students were killed. In Israel, when Hamas kidnapped some Israelis, about 266 of them, Israel went there with bombs, jets, everything to rescue these people. They ended up killing 85 of their own people with their bombs. And at the end of the day, the remaining one that were released, about 100 or something, it was through negotiation. They have to release some of them. They negotiated, they call Hamas terrorist group, but they have to negotiate with the terrorist group to release the ones that are alive. So when you say don't negotiate, if Israel can be negotiating, America was here in Nigeria the other time to free one of their citizens. Did anybody ask them whether they killed the kidnappers? Did anybody ask for the video of the death of the kidnappers? But they rescued that the person and take the person. They may have paid those kidnappers too. So why do we always bring in theories that are not workable? You said you want to go and rescue those students, you want them to kill your kidnappers and other place. How do you think only one release of gunshots and these students will not panic and some of them will not even die? Do you want them to come back and say, we are there expecting government to come back and say, okay, we went to rescue them. 15 of the students died. We killed 10 kidnappers. Is that what they want to? If they were their kids, would they ask such questions?
Well, quite salient questions you've raised here yourself. Let's come to another angle to this story. When it comes to the rise in school abductions, many say it is a Boko Haram ideology to outlaw Western education. And by closing Trinity colleges across the country, over 40 of them who have been closed in wake of rising attacks, despite provisions of over 145 billion naira under the Safe School initiatives, National Association of Nigerian Students are raising the alarm. They're also threatening a nationwide action should there not be more or less transparency in the use of the Safe School Initiative funds and the reopening of Trinity colleges. How do we judiciously revisit this issue without opening fresh wounds or leaving more students in danger of being abducted?
The government was proactive and they should have done this long time ago. I for one, I don't believe with the level of security situation of the northern part of this country, I don't believe there should still be a boarding school within most of the northern states. It's untenable. You are creating room for kidnappings. The tension is there. The insecurity situation is there. The land mass is massive. Most of these governors, that's why I said most of these governors, they are not transparent. The chairmen are not transparent. If they are transparent enough and the people understand what they are doing, the people pay more tax, they can recruit more hands. But if you calculate the number of security men we have as at today, they can't man only Niger State. Niger State is as big as all the five southeast states of Nigeria. So when you say we even have 200, 300,000 people, if you put more boots on ground, it can protect all the students. And if you look at the sample of how these kidnappings have taken place since the days of the Chibok girls, these kidnappings always take place in the night. 99% of them take place in the night. So it means these students are left more vulnerable in the night. When you say safe school, let's assume we even put a lot of soldiers in front of the schools, and then the kidnappers decide to call, the terrorists or whatever they call themselves, decide to come, they want to come and hijack students. Are you not putting the life of these students at risk? So it's better. Most of these unity schools, the reason why they are closed, most of them are boarding facilities. They have boarding facilities. Then you remove those students from closed boarding facilities for the time being. It's not a desert. The world is sophisticated. During the COVID era, in most schools in developed countries, they have lectures via this type of system we are using to communicate in the media today. You can hold lecture remotely. People will be at home, you teach them. So it's not compulsory that they must go and sleep inside the school till daybreak before they have knowledge. Close this boarding school for the time being, so till the security situation improves across the country. If you leave those students there, they are vulnerable. So, like I told you earlier, over 99% of every kidnapping done within the northern space were done in the night, because these students, they live in boarding houses. So close the boarding houses and you reduce it, so that before if they kidnap daytime, let's assume they kidnap within the day and the alarm comes in, before they move from here, like here in Asaba, for example, before they move from here to Onitsha, the planes are everywhere, they are monitoring their movement. But in the night, when they kidnap this way, you can't monitor them because everywhere is dark. So close is a wise decision, is the best decision that the government can take. They should even close more of these boarding schools across the northern states. Then the unity schools, they can shut them, turn them to day schools, so that at the end of the day, we minimize these terrorists are hitting soft targets. Not really, they don't want Western education. They are hitting soft targets. They have demands. Some of their kingpins are in jail. So they need these students. When they capture these students, they use them as bargaining tools. We saw it play out when they kidnapped these train passengers under Buhari regime. They demanded that some of their kingpins should be released, and that is what they are doing. So it's not about the education. No, it's not about education. They just want their kingpins to be released, and they are going for soft targeting. So the best thing that the government can do is to shut down these boarding schools across the north.
Now, you also questioned the positioning of certain security men in front of schools. There are questions over allegations that during the Kebbi incidents, the personnel on ground were allegedly withdrawn before the abductors struck. In keeping with some of the demands that our churches, our mosques be heavily guarded when people assemble to worship, how do we manage this, would I call it deployment of personnel and withdrawal of personnel in the bid that there might be attacks at certain points?
We have a lot of problem with ourselves, a very grave problem. When you look at Nigeria as a whole, many Nigerians are not patriotic. They don't love Nigeria. They are first loyal to their ethnic group. Some are loyal to their religious group. So they are not loyal to Nigeria itself. And sometimes you find that some of these people working as either military men or civil servants, they have political ideology. So sometimes when a person like me, for example, if I'm in APC, I'm the governor of Delta State, and some persons working here are within PDP, they want to do everything to sabotage my government. So that is one of the biggest challenges we face as a people. People don't care. They don't care how it happens. We heard the case of Mamun, one of the men head by DSS today. He is a chief negotiator for the terrorists. He was saying it's on the part of neutrality, like Sheikh Gumi, that I don't have anything to do with these people. But all the time they kidnap some of these kids or some of these persons within these states, you see him come out and say he want to help them to negotiate. But later we have discovered through the DSS that he was paid 50 million naira or so, $50 million or so for the kidnaps of these railway passengers the last time. So there is no patriotism within most Nigerians. What they normally do, what most Nigerians normally do, is self-interest first. And when you have such military that has over 300 and something thousand workforce within the military, they are going to be saboteurs. And I believe whatever happened there, the governor should be blamed for that of Niger. The military men should be blamed. According to the governor, he said he got intelligence reports that these guys are coming. Okay, if you got such intelligence, why not shut down the school? Why wait till the people will come and fight it? Okay, what if they overrun the military and they capture these guys the same way they have captured them? So, first of all, we have trust issue with many persons don't believe in Nigeria. That is the simple truth. They don't believe in it. And that is why for the past 15 years, we have been trying to end this terrorism. And as I told you in the past in this program, we can't end it because they have a lot of local support that are sympathetic to them because of their religion, local support that are sympathetic to them because of their ethnic group. And it's going to be it's going to be a very long night. And I pity Nigeria because we spend huge resources fighting these bandits, these criminals. And I love what the president said the other time during this emergency declared on security. States should have let them have their police. Let them have whatever they want to have to tackle whatever security they have, so that when it happens, the people will call on the governors, and not when they collect a pickpocket, collect somebody's bag in New Benin, you will be calling the president. When they are dragging land with talks, they will be calling the president. There are a lot of security that should be tackled within the states, and if these state governors fail, we should hold them responsible.
Now, Doctor, let's also talk about the position of the Senate, who are also looking to classify kidnapping as acts of terrorism while preferring a death penalty. Do you believe that this would help curb the spate of rising abductions across the country?
The problem is not even the penalty. Even if you like, we have seen a lot of kidnappers killed during kidnapping incidents. We have seen a lot of them killed. So the problem is not even the death penalty. The problem first must start from society, because today you see a lot. I've seen a lot of young boys, some of them as young as 17, 18 years, driving cars that are worth 1,800 million. They don't have any source of revenue within this country. So we must start from there. How can somebody that is still in secondary school, some of them are just in their first year in university, has 100 million from a poor home? The father cannot even pay for one room house rent, and the poor already has 100 million. And we don't ask, how did these people get this money? And when we decide to ask, when the security agency decide to ask, we'll be saying they should leave them alone. How did Tinubu get his money? So we must start from the fabrics. We must trace source of income. You must be able to, if for example today I have 50 houses in Nigeria, I should be able to declare how I got those 50 houses. It's not for you to ask me, I have 50 houses, nobody know where I get the money from, nobody asks where I get the money from. Not until we start tracing how these persons are getting their money. We see a lot of, when in my school here, where I lectured, the students have more cars than the lecturer cannot buy some of the cars that the students have. And they are not workers, they don't have anything that they are doing. Many of them are kidnappers. So that is where we start from, meaning we know them. If, for example, I have a son, and my son does not have a job, but he can build a house of 1 billion naira, I should be able to call the authorities and tell the authorities, I don't know what my son is doing. And the authority will come, pick that son for questioning. But we condone them. You see some parents, they don't ask how the son get money, they can give them 100 million to go and build that, and they celebrate. So we have institutionalized kidnapping in Nigeria. It's now an institution. So killing it must start from the roots, not even just saying you put death sentence. When they even put 20 years sentence, how many of these kidnappers are in jail? When they put 20 years sentence, if they put 10 years sentence, how many of them are in jail? So we should start from there. We must start from, at least let the one that we have first. If it's 10 years, if it's 20 years, let it be working first. Not death sentence. These guys are not scared of death. When you see their face, you see them as people that are scared of death. No.
Now let's also talk about the role of the United States in face of Nigeria's insecurity. It's been captured on that front as an alleged Christian genocide, which has sparked debates. People have said it's been the lack of ambassadorial appointments that have left for a diplomatic gap between Nigeria and the US. The president has listed 3 persons for ambassadorial appointments to serve in US, UK, and France. One of them is the ex-DSS DG, who has been tipped for this ambassadorial appointment. What do you make of this? Would this help resolve the tensions between Nigeria and the US particularly?
It will not help. To
Why
me,
so?
it's reactionary. I saw the president name these three ambassadors, and he said one is going to US and the UK and one other places. I don't think it's reactionary. America, as of today, has issue with Mexico. They have issue with Ecuador. They have issue with Canada. They have issue with South Africa. The same president, Donald Trump, it's just less than 1 year in office. Is Canada not having an ambassador in US? Is South Africa not having an ambassador in US? Is Mexico not having an ambassador in US? So it's just reactionary. Maybe the president felt a lot of persons want to hold him responsible that because of ambassador, that is why we are having issues. But if I were to be the advisor of the president, I shouldn't tell him to react that way. It's not a matter of ambassador or not. The president of America, as of today, has issues, is trying to be, if not for their kind of democracy that is so advanced that will stop him from becoming another Hitler. He would have been an Hitler as we are speaking. He wanted to invade Ecuador because of drug cartel. He said they have drug cartel. If you have drug cartel within another country, you go down and invade the country. He wanted to invade Mexico. He said they have drug cartel. If they have drug cartel, you just go there and invade the country. So if not for American democracy, he would have rode his soldiers into Mexico, capture Ecuador, capture Venezuela, and that is how Hitler became a dictator and wanted to take over the whole world. So he's just a dictator. Whatever happened in Nigeria is just politics. I keep saying it. These people have a lot of intelligence reports on Nigeria as we are speaking. They know what is actually happening, and Donald Trump is privy to whatever intelligence report America have on Nigeria, and they know it's false. When he said they were killing white farmers, there's genocide against white farmers in South Africa. Since the past 1 year, how many South African white farmers have been killed? How many have, you are a reporter, how many do you see that, yes, they have killed 100? If Donald Trump believes 70,000 that were dead in Palestine, in Gaza are not genocide, why does he think South Africa that has not killed one white farmer for the past 1 year is committing genocide? It's just like a case of giving a dog bad name to kill it. And I like the way Nigeria responded. You don't, when you see a madman running through the street, you don't chase him naked. There is a couple, both of you mad people. So you let him just rant. And today they have changed their style. They are now saying they want to just support Nigeria, not coming to invade Nigeria again. So it's just politics, nothing more.
Now, going forward, what are the hopes of the roles of ambassadors in Nigeria going forward? For the last 2 years, we've not really had any apart from the recent appointment to support the foreign minister of a minister of state in Bianca Odumegwu Ojukwu. How would you rate their performance? Do you think they've been able to sustain the need for bilateral presence in some of the nations they have so far visited, or they could use more hands?
If you ask me, I'm not so keen about this ambassadorial issue. I'm not keen about them. I did a study on my own on how much Nigeria spent on one ambassador, how much Nigeria spent per one ambassador in a year. I did a study on it. And at the end of the day, I discovered that in all the if we decide to have 180 something ambassadors in all the countries within this world, we are going to be spending over 200 billion annually to maintain them. Over 200 billion to maintain all these ambassadors. They are politicians. Some of them don't even stay in those countries where they post them to. You just call them that, okay, for example, you call one top politician and say, go to be ambassador to Granada. He will just be there with his family, enjoying himself, using Nigerians' money to train his children in school there. So I'm not so keen about them. If we really want to have even ambassadors, we should close some of our diplomatic offices. Why should we have 189 diplomatic offices around all countries in the world? Close some, maybe close about 100. Because we are here, we are complaining about the Senate. We say the senators are taking too much, it should be part-time. Some people say we should scrap one of the arm of the National Assembly because they take too much. This year, the National Assembly budget is about 330 billion, and we are all shouting, not for the senators alone, including their workers, the legislative institute, and the rest. And we all complain that the money is too much. But here we are still clamoring that they should employ more politicians and send them as ambassadors and spend over 200 billion every year. So where do we really stand? When Buhari had ambassadors around the whole world, did he solve our security situation? Did he improve our economy? When Jonathan has ambassador in the whole world, did he improve our economy? So we should sometimes we are more carried away with social media trend. That is why you see this hue and cry about ambassador. Many of those that are even making this cry, they are the politicians waiting to feast on some of this money that ambassadors. In this diplomatic, we have career diplomats there. A lot of career diplomats are there who should be doing this job.
Now, in terms of the three names that were submitted as nominations, they are supposed to be designated as non-career ambassadors. Would it make any difference, in your opinion, because you seem to not even support the issue in its entirety?
When you say career, when you say career ambassador is somebody that is a diplomat, has been trained as a diplomat for years. When you say non-career, it means they are the political class that becomes ambassadors. So taking these guys, their security background.
Doctor, why I ask, because owing to the peculiarity of the issue, if you look at the profiles of those submitted, one is an ex-DSS DG, the other is the ex-NIA boss who has dealt with a lot of national intelligence as it concerns Nigeria. And strategically, the three countries they're supposed to interface with, the US one who had threatened military invasion, the other the UK, our former colonial masters, and France, which the president seems to have an envisioned economic potential with the hopes of attracting more investments and has visited quite frequently. And hence the reason why I asked, this is their non-career CV. Does it help in any stead?
I didn't really get you clearly, but if I can get what you are trying to tell me, where the impact they are going to make,
yes,
like
sir.
I've just explained, as I've just explained now, I don't think they will be making any impact. I don't see much impact coming from there. If you like, you make Nigeria Chief of Army Staff the next ambassador to any part of the country. I don't really see any impact because I don't think they are going to add anything new. It's still going to be business as usual. Yes, we know we have ambassadors with security background. If you send the former DSS chief to US, what is he going to US to do? Which security advantage is he going to add to Nigeria profile? It's not going to add anything. It will not make America. If America don't want to sell weapons to Nigeria, it will not force America to sell weapons to us. We had ambassadors under Jonathan that were in America. Did they sell weapons to Jonathan? No, they said because of his human rights concern, they cannot sell weapons to Jonathan. So it's not going to change any of their narrative. The only problem every country have, like I keep saying, is just the actors. We can, if we want to have ambassadors, we can have. If the money is available, if we are very rich like Saudi Arabia, we are very rich like South Africa, we are very rich like Brazil, we can maintain even 300. We want to have two ambassadors per country. We can decide to have 2 or 3 ambassadors per country because the money is there. But now there is no money. And those thinking the president is lackadaisical by not appointing ambassadors. The president is looking at the finance. Where is the money going to come from? So when we are talking of cutting costs, not having ambassador, career or non-career ambassador is one way of cutting this cost. Let the diplomats that are there, let them do the job. If you appoint me as an ambassador today, I'm going there. If I have 4 kids, I'm going there with 4 of my kids. I'm going there with my wife. Nigeria is going to be paying the school fees of all my kids, taking care of all my kids, taking care of myself, taking care of my wife for the whole year. And I determine what I want to eat. You cannot take me there and start giving me Indomie to eat. I need good food. So you need to feed me well. So these are the wastage that we are talking of.
Well, I must thank you, Dr. Osodeke Onovughe, for taking our time to lend your thoughts to the issues in the news this morning. In the coming days, we'll revisit the outcomes of some of the nominees submitted for screening and approval by the President to the National Assembly, and we'll look at how far some of the recommendations in terms of death penalty and more or less the deployment of forest guards by the DSS and recruitment of more personnel can help our nation to stem the tide of rising insecurity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Wishing you the best of your day. Oh, Dr. Osodeke joined us from Asaba, Delta State this morning as our virtual guest, reviewing issues in the news. This is as much as we can take on the program in terms of current affairs-driven issues. At the top of the hour, we'll hand you over to our studio in Uyo for ADBN Sports, with a review of match day 5 in the UEFA Champions League. Over 40 goals scored. One team remains with a perfect 100 record, having not lost any of their opening 5. However, Bayern Munich has suffered their first defeat of the season How does this shape the places in terms of the European aspirations of some of the clubs who have never won the competition? And coming back to other sporting issues from across the games of three-pointers and checkered flags, they'll be on hand to walk you through our quest for an improved grassroots sports development in Nigeria as well. My name is Bito Brian, thanking you for choosing to start your day on ADBN television and wishing you the best of the rest of your day ahead. Have a nice day.